So hi there everyone and welcome back to my latest video. In this video I'm going to have a good run through all of the new features that have been added to Portal in Battlefield 2042 through update 2.2, and as always I'm going to give you a few examples of how to use the new blocks and features that have been added. More on that in a second. I just want to say it seems like just yesterday I was pushing out a new video going over the blocks that have been added in update 2.1. You can check that video out by having a look at the link at the top right hand corner, which gave you a good look at the blocks that were added in the last update. But after that update, I wasn't expecting that much, to be honest. And here we are, just a few weeks later, with another huge list of blocks and another huge feature that's been added to the Portal editor for us to play with. We've been asking for a long time for placeable objects to be added to Portal, and the icons that were added in the last update were a really good addition. But this new update has really pushed the boat out, really added something. We have our first solid placeable objects in the form of MCOMS. Now, although we know how MCOMS work in the traditional modes, and now we can place them, I can see some interesting variations coming on the traditional rush modes. But now we have full access and control over the MCOMS, we can start to think of some really crazy ways they can be used, and it isn't just using them as MCOMS. I'd like to think that maybe this is the first step in adding some additional placeable items to the game, not just MCOMS maybe, and it's those kind of tools that really let these creators that are making modes go really crazy and wild and come up with the amazing modes that they do. I have plans for many more tutorials to come, and of course I will be doing a really deep dive into MCOMS in the coming weeks. Not all of the blocks have been added, so I'm just going to delay that just a little bit. They're not fully complete just yet, but in this video I will get you started with MCOMS, give you a little guide how to use them, and as always we'll look at some examples of code and examples of how they work in game. I've added some chats at the bottom so you can skip straight to what you're interested in. As always, if you like the video, please do click the like button. Really helps drive this video up the YouTube algorithm. And if you have not done so already, and most people who watch my videos have not, if you could click the subscribe button, it doesn't cost you anything, but I would be eternally grateful. I am on a quest for 1,000 subscribers by Christmas. I am very much on target for that, but you can help. Just click the subscribe button and you'll be one more on my journey towards that big 1,000 total that I've got. Right, without further ado, let's crack on with the actual video and look at these new blocks and features that have been added to Portal in update 2.2. So just a couple of things before we get started. In the last video, 2.1, I did mention that there was a new block called enableHQ, and at that time I couldn't quite get it to work. I wasn't sure why. So it turns out that it's very similar to the objective blocks, and there is an order of events when you're setting things, and it turns out that you can't use these blocks before the game has started. So if I just change this to ongoing just like that and a global event, this should run this before the game starts, but it turns out the objectives are set up later than that. So the fix is really quite simple. Just on game mode started, switch it to that, and then we've got the enableHQ blocks, which will now quite happily work. So if you want to use these enableHQ blocks, that's how you do it. Just set it on game mode started. If somebody else has got a better solution, that's great, but this seems to work for me. It does work the way that I thought that it did, which is you use the enableHQ block, you put the team that you want to enable or disable it for, and then you put in there the index number of the HQ for that team that you want to disable. So if there's only one HQ, it's index 0, and if you set it to false, you'll not see it on the screen anymore. So just a word of warning, it does disable deployment from the HQ. The HQ actually just disappears, so you need some other mechanism of ensuring that the team can actually deploy. But yeah, the enableHQ block does work as intended, and that's a little bit of a rundown. When I do my complete video on objectives, we'll have a closer look at that. So I should also say that there are a couple of blocks mentioned in the patch notes that haven't appeared yet. The rules editor is getting quite big at the moment, so maybe I've missed them. Let me know if I have, but I haven't spotted the vehicle repair or the vehicle damage block. The isType block was there, and now that seems to have disappeared, so we wait for those. And also the MCOMS have some new events which we will go through in this video, but the event payloads for the MCOMS haven't added, and that's been a bit of a restriction. So before we dig into the web builder and the rules editor, a couple of other things appeared on the changelog. Obviously we have now got persistent servers that have been added. There's a lot of information in the update about persistent servers. If you want a bit of a rundown on that, I did a video last week and I've just put a link to it in the top right hand corner, just looking at all the changes that came with persistent servers. A great addition. If we scroll down just a little bit further on the patch notes, we can also see, let's just have a look up here, we've got the in-game block players list now updates in real time when blocking or unblocking a user from the same platform. Small addition, but useful if you run your own server, especially now that we've got persistent servers as well. When joining a portal featured experience, the map location icon is now displayed on the loading screen in the bottom left corner of the screen, and I've seen some good updates to the user interface. For example, on the end of screen battle pass screen, I've noticed that there's a new timer been added, which is particularly useful, to be honest, because you get stuck in that screen and you have no idea how long it's going to take. We've also got a few more additions just down at the bottom I spotted. We've got Stranded has now been added to the custom conquest game mode. I'll be honest, I thought that was already in there. Of course, the big game changer now will be seeing some new classic maps added, and there's a lot of history there to pull from, loads of maps you could pull from. So hopefully, although things have gone a little bit quiet on the map front and we haven't seen anything new added since launch, could we get some info soon, please? And then we've got the addition of MCOMS to TDM, FFA, Vehicle TDM and Custom Conquest modes, and the MCOMS I will dig deeper into in the rules editor very, very soon. So next up, I did notice that there had been an additional mutator added to the web builder, and that is Reflect Friendly Fire. I think it's just down at the bottom. So under modifiers, under gameplay, you can see this new Reflect Friendly Fire damage. Now this is useful if you're one of those players that likes to play with friendly fire on, and I do. It does add an extra layer of tactical gameplay. Now up until now, unless you coded a mechanism to deal with team kills through the logic editor, which in turn reduced XP, you just have to put up with players happily team killing without any consequence. So this block changes that now, and any players on your team who team kill twice or more will now have any friendly fire reflected back at them. It's a small addition, but it's a welcome addition that should help make your hardcore modes or other variations of game modes that want to use friendly fire just that little bit more enjoyable. It does say though that it resets after 90 seconds, so they don't have to put up with it all the way through the match. I think that's a really good little cool addition. Right, next we're just going to move on to the rules editor. I'm going to run through some of the other blocks first. I'll do MCOMS shortly. If you want to just skip to the MCOMS stuff, just select it from the chapters below, but we'll run through a few of the other additions first. So here we are back in the logic editor again, and we're just going to have a little look at the new objective blocks that have been added. I think we're just about there with the objective blocks. It seems like we've got most of the issues covered now, so I will be able to do a complete guide to objectives at some point shortly. But we'll just have a look at the two that have been added in this update. We have getCapturePointPosition to begin with, and you can see that in this case, this getCapturePointPosition block needs an objective added to it, so we're just going to add this get objective block and get objective C1, and that will return a vector or a position that is the exact position of this objective. It actually gives you the position of where the flag is. So this little example code that we've got here, and you can see it running at the top right hand corner, places a little icon at the flag position of C1. So you can see in this little bit of code that I've got here, we are going to run through all of the objectives in the game. We are going to disable each one of those objectives. We have a world icon image that we've set to a triangle. We're going to enable it, and then we are going to position that directly on objective C1, and you can see that just at the top right hand corner. Now this might be useful if you want to place something quite easily in an objective, so you can place it in or around an objective if you want to. You want to place a player exactly on an objective, you can do, because you can get the exact position of that objective, a vehicle, an MCOM. You can do that without having to work it out. So this is quite a useful tool, and we'll maybe look at some examples of that later on. Like I say, in the example that you're looking at the top right hand corner, I've just placed a little triangle icon image to show you how this works. Now this little block of code actually waits for 60 seconds, and then you can see it will enable the capture point C1, and then the flag will disappear. I think that's what you're seeing in the top right hand corner. Okay. So next up we have the enable capturing block, and you can just see that I've highlighted it there in this little example that I've got. Now this one's an interesting one. So previously you either enabled the capture point or disabled it. If you enabled it, it was able to be captured. If you disabled it, it was hidden and not able to be captured. But there are scenarios where you might want the objective to be visible but not to be able to be captured. Now, using the enable capturing block, you can enable the game mode objective so it's visible on the screen, but you can disable the capturing of that objective, so it doesn't matter if a player's on it and they're able to see it, it won't be able to be captured. So you can see in this example here we have enabled C1, but we have disabled the capturing of C1. Now think of games like Frontlines, for example. There's a period of time when a flag's visible but no teams can capture it. This is helpful because it shows them where they need to go next and be able to set up defense and that kind of stuff. This block allows that sort of thing to be able to happen. The objective will be visible, but it can't be captured by either team. So in the example that's running at the top right hand corner, we've just extended the little example that I did before, only this time, if I can just zoom out a little bit, might be quite difficult for you to see, but in this case we have once again disabled all of the game mode objectives. We've got a little icon, we've got the position of it. In this case I've added a little bit to it to make it above the flag, so in this case now you're going to be able to see a little timer on that. We have enabled C1, so that's the only objective that's enabled, but we have disabled the capturing, and you should see that there's a little timer above it. You can see the flag, but it tells you you've got 60 seconds and then that flag will be active, and then once that time is up we enable the capturing and disable the icon and the text. So I think this block's got a lot of potential, to be honest, because previously if you wanted to stop a point being captured you had to hide it, which was okay, it wasn't too bad, but there's plenty of times when you want to direct players to an objective but you don't want that objective to be active. This will allow you to do that. So moving away from objectives for a while, we've got two new events. We've got onPlayerDamaged and we've got onPlayerEarnedKillAssist. Good to see us keep getting these events, because the more events we get, the more we are able to control when our code triggers, because of course everything is driven by these events. These two trigger as you'd expect them to do. So onPlayerDamaged, when a player takes some damage, this event triggers, and onPlayerEarnedKillAssist triggers when the player earns a kill assist. It all makes sense really. Just want to take a little look at this onPlayerDamaged for a moment. This has three event payloads. It has event damage type, I'll come back to that in a second. It has event other player and it has event player. Now this is useful because if you take some damage or if a player takes some damage, you're able to check what that damage type was and then do something in response to that. So in this case, nice simple example, we've got is the victim damage type, we've got the event payload, event damage type, and then we've checked to see if it's a weapon that's caused that damage. And we can check for barbed wire, explosion, fall, fire, headshot, and melee. Now, if you want to figure out whether a player got hit or you got hit by a headshot, you can do that. Just switch it to headshot. So it's victim damage type, event damage type, a headshot. Just a useful little thing, I think. Some people like to keep track of headshots and count them. Useful thing to know. And here we've used a little message. You were hit by gunfire from, and that's the event other player. So that's the player that hit this player with gunfire. I hope that makes sense. Not too confusing. And then we're going to display that message to the event player. That was the player that took the damage. So we've got the player that took the damage, the player that damaged them, and the type of damage that they delivered. We're also going to spot the player that delivered the damage for 2 seconds. But yeah, of course, you can put whatever you want in there. Just before we move on, it is worth mentioning that the one thing you don't get as an event payload for onPlayerDamaged is the amount of damage that was delivered. And that's really unfortunate, because this could be really useful if we know exactly how much damage is delivered when a player takes damage. So I don't know if anybody's listening, but if you can manage to add that event payload, that would be very, very useful. Lots of us like to check weapon damage. There's quite a few experiences out there, weapon testers. I've done one myself, or if you've not seen that video, it's at the top right hand corner as well. You can use that, but these experiences would have been so much easier to create if we could have just got the damage. We've had to use a little bit of a fudge. Anyway, it would be really good to see an event payload, which is the event damage, the event amount of damage, and it'd be good to see that coming soon. Then just underneath we've got onPlayerEarnedKillAssist, and this one's nice and simple. If you earn a kill assist, this event will trigger, and maybe you want to give an extra bonus, some points, a message, whatever it might be. This new event will give you. It looks like we're just clearing up a few edge cases with these events, but they are very useful to see added. And so now, last but not least, onto the final and most important one, I think, if you've been waiting, or of course if you've skipped, and that is the addition of the new placeable MCOM blocks. Now, I honestly didn't expect this coming, but I'm really, really grateful to see it. And I do plan to do a bigger video on MCOMs when any issues have been sorted out, because right now they're not exactly working the way that we want them to do. There's a few things that are missing or need updating just to make them work. However, they are workable. Just need to see a few things improve before before we do a full and complete guide. Now you can see we have a range of MCOM blocks available to us, and also some of the other blocks that are in the game are being updated to support the MCOM blocks. For example, the enableObjective block, the setObjectiveOwner, and the teleport block. Now I'm going to have a little bit of a dig through the new blocks and we will give you a bit of an overview. I wanted to include these and give you some examples of how you can use them in your experiences. But of course, if you hang fire, if you want a little bit more detail, just wait for that full guide and I'll give you a complete rundown of everything once everything's complete. But this little section should just get you started on MCOMs if you want a little bit of info to get you going. So first of all, we have the enable game mode objective block that we've used just at the top. We have the set objective block just underneath it. And then we have the teleport block. And we're going to use these three blocks in conjunction with here to place two MCOMs, MCOMA and MCOMB. These are available in the selection list. So we're going to enable game mode objective. We are going to get the objective and we are going to get an MCOM. And in this case, it's A. You can see we have 8 MCOMs available to us, A to H. And then we are going to set that to true. So this enables MCOMA, and we're going to do the same with MCOMB. Disabling it makes that particular MCOM disappear, but we'll look at that afterwards. Next, we're going to set the objective owner. So we set the objective owner of MCOMA to be team 1 and set the owner of objective B or MCOMB to be team 2. This basically colours the icon above them and controls who is able to set or arm an MCOM and who is able to disarm an MCOM, and you'll get that little bit of interactivity. And then finally, the teleport block has been changed, so you can now move these MCOMs to where you want them to be. So I have put get objective A, so it's going to teleport objective A to this position, and it's going to teleport objective or MCOMB to this position, and on the screen at the top right hand corner you should see that in action. We've placed two MCOMs next to each other, being coloured appropriately, and now the correct team can interact with them. So next, we've also had 3 events added that are tied to the MCOMs. So if you just have a look here, I've got them all prepared. We've got onMCOMArmed, we've got onMCOMDefused, and we've got onMCOMDestroyed. And each has a slightly different payload. So for example, the onMCOMArmed gives the player that armed it. onMCOMDefused gives the MCOM that was defused and the player that defused it, and finally destroyed gives the MCOM that was destroyed. Now unfortunately the payloads don't seem to have been added, and by that I mean the MCOM payloads, so we can't get the actual MCOM details. So I just say look out for this when they arrive, and I'll try to have some more detail when everything is up to date and complete. I could work around it, but rather than confuse people and give some ways of working that aren't going to be up to date when the MCOM payloads have been added, I'll just leave that and we'll just work with what we've got at the moment. For example, if the MCOM payloads have been added, then we'd be able to work out which team had been affected by the event. But as I say, when the MCOM payloads are added, we'll work around that. So if we have a look here, we have triggered on armed, and you can see in the video we just got a little message that just shows that event's been triggered. So the MCOM's armed and we can see a message. I don't have an example of the MCOM being diffused, but that just works the same way. And we've also got a message for when the MCOM was destroyed. Not much more to add to that. We just need to wait for the payloads to be able to use these properly. So next up, the next new block that's been added for MCOMs is the ability to get and set the remaining fuse time for each MCOM. So I've added 3 MCOMs to the example now, so you can see we've got 3 MCOMs, but these have all had their objective owner set to team ID 1. So you can see 3 MCOMs on the screen, and these have all been given to team 1. And I've set the fuse time, so we can see this block in use at the bottom. So set MCOMFuseTime, and we've set A, B and C to different times. So we've got 10, 20 and 30 seconds. So this allows you to set the MCOMs to have different values for the fuse times. You can set them to be longer or shorter, or do it interactively and change them as the game progresses. I've put some text above each MCOM. I'll show you an example of that in a moment just underneath, so you can see how I've done that. But just a little mention, I will include the playground ID in the description at the bottom, so you can get all of this code and have a little look at it yourself as well. So this is how you set the MCOMFuseTime. Just give it a MCOM MCOM that you want to set and a value. But just scroll down a little bit, I have used the getMCOMFuseTime or getRemainingFuseTime to be able to display the fuse time above it. So you can see we've got set world icon text, and then we've put some text in there remaining, and then we've got get remaining fuse time that will return the remaining fuse time for that particular MCOM. Now what I'd really like to do is use the ongoing rule to deal with this for each MCOM, but as the payload isn't there, it just isn't possible at the minute. So some part of this at the moment is a bit messy, but I would say that hopefully when I get round to doing the full tutorial, this will all be there and you get enough out of what I've shown you now in order to make this work. So we've got get remaining fuse time that allows you to get the fuse time of an MCOM, and then we have just at the top set the MCOM fuse time, which allows you to set the fuse time for each MCOM. So finally, we'll just look at the last few blocks. We have some blocks that allow us to get the state of an MCOM, and an MCOM can be in a variety of different states. It can be either active, armed, arming, diffused, or defusing. So you can see there's 5 little choices there, and we can use the getMCOMState to get the state of a particular MCOM. Now the getMCOMState returns either true if the MCOM is in that state, or false if it is not. So you can see in this case we have an ongoing global rule that will run when we get the MCOM state of MCOMA, and that state is that it is active. So this block, this rule will run when that MCOM is active. It would be beneficial, of course, as always, as I said before, if we could use the ongoing rule for MCOMs. That would be particularly useful. So this is a little bit of a fudge really to show you how this might work in practice, but it may well get you started. And then once the MCOM is active, we have a loop that will keep looping while that MCOM is still active, and you can see we can check inside there what the current state of the MCOM is and change the message appropriately. So if we get the MCOM state of MCOMA and it is arming, then we can display a message saying it's arming. If we get the MCOM state of MCOMA and it is armed, then we can show that message, and you should see that in the top right hand corner. So the new getMCOMState block returns a true or false if the MCOM that you give it is in the state that you have said. So now finally, last but not least, we have the getAllMCOMS block, which returns all the MCOMs in the game. We've got similar blocks for players, for vehicles, for objectives, and now we have the ability to get all of the MCOMs that are in the game as well. Now there's going to be a lot of uses for this, but I am going to show you just the one now to finish off this video, and that will be ending the game when all of the MCOMs have been destroyed. Now this is going to be a bit tricky without the payloads to disable an MCOM when it's destroyed, so for now I'm just going to use the diffuse time to decide if an MCOM should be destroyed. Now let me just stress, this is probably a bad way of doing it, and when all of the MCOM blocks have been completed and added and the payloads have been added, I will give you another way or a proper way of doing it in a full tutorial. So this is a real fudge, and it might have issues if the opposing team defuses, for example, at the last minute. I haven't tested it, but that won't matter when the payloads come anyway, and we're just using this as an example. So if you've got to the end of this video with me, this is just an example of how to end the game as we stand now without the payload blocks if all of the MCOMs are destroyed. So in my example, we only have team 1 with MCOMs, so we'll just set team 2 to win if no MCOMs remain active for team 1. So you can see we've got these 3 blocks are just the same. Just a reminder, we'll put a link to the playground ID in the description below if you want these blocks of code. So we'll just use this bottom one disabled C, or I've just noticed I've spelled that incorrectly. Let's just, there we go, because I just copied and pasted it. So basically this is an ongoing global rule. We'll probably attach this to an MCOM when we get the proper payloads eventually, which has the conditions set to check the remaining fuse time on MCOMC, and when that is less than or equal to 0, I'm going to guess that that means that the MCOM has been destroyed. So we are going to disable that MCOM objective, which basically makes it disappear from the screen. We're going to wait for 1 second. I'm not sure we need to wait for 1 second, but it's just in case. And then we have this really rather long block of code, which you are welcome to copy or get for yourself. But we're going to check, is it true for all MCOMs that we have got? I'll just paraphrase this, that are owned by team 1, that their state is that they are not active. So if all of the MCOMs that are on Team 1 side are not active anymore, we're going to assume that we have disabled all of them, and we are going to end the game mode for that team. Now, I don't think I've done a particularly good job of explaining that, to be honest, but like I say, it is a bit of a fudgy way around getting it. But we have used the getAllMCOMS block, we have got all of the MCOMs and filtered them by Team 1, and we've just checked that each one of those is not active. And that's it. That will end the game mode if all of the MCOMs for that team have been destroyed. As I say, that's a little bit of a fudge. I'm not quite sure that's the way that we will work when we get down to it in the end. But it does give you a way of solving that problem now. So we have done a rule for every single MCOM, A, B and C. I don't think we'll need to do that when the payloads come. I think we'll be able to just create one rule that does it for all. But again, look out for that tutorial when it comes. And that's it for update 2.2. Thanks for watching. It's been quite a long video like my other update was. I don't think that's a bad thing because clearly we are getting lots and lots of blocks added. Once they stop adding blocks, I will get back onto my usual kind of rotation of guides and other things, but these do take a long time to figure out and work out how these things work and then put examples together. So I hope you don't mind me spending a little bit of extra time on these and looking at them. Look out for my MCOMS tutorial and some other things coming soon. Hopefully if I hit 1,000 subscribers, and yes, you can help me do that if you got all the way to the end. I think that's unlikely. We'll get many people at the end, but I would really appreciate it if you've not subscribed already, that you do click that subscribe button, and I might do something special for 1,000 subscribers. If not, don't forget, just click the like button. That's very useful to me, drives me up the YouTube algorithm. Right then folks, as always, I will see you again next time. Take care everybody, and bye bye for now.